Hi, everyone. Glad to have you with us. This is the next installment of the interactive webinar event series with Lee Ellis and Hugh Massey. So this one today is, as you see on the screen, is Hiring the Best Talent, a Leadership Behavior DNA game show. We had such a good time last month that this month we wanted to do the game show format again. So if you're attending live, you have the opportunity to win 3 different prizes today based on 3 different hiring scenarios that we're going to cover together as a team. So welcome and get ready and to have a great time and be engaged through the entire event. Well, again, those that are with us today are Lee Ellis and Hugh Massey. Lee Ellis is president of Leading with Honor and has been a leadership coach for for 20 plus years, and Hugh Massey is CEO of DNA Behavior. Both these gentlemen have worked together for many, many years on the topic of human behavior. Trust me, they're passionate about it, they love it, and they're ready to share information so freely and so generously on this topic today. Now, we chose specifically the idea of hiring today because while many companies and many organizations are on hold right now or making certain decisions because of what we've been through the last few months, many of you and many of our clients are proceeding right ahead. They're hiring people every day, or they're going to be hiring people in the near future. We know this is an important topic, and we believe and we know that hiring through the lens of behavior and human behavior is the best way to find the best candidate. And we'll explain a little bit more about that. And so we're just glad to have this topic, glad to share it with you today. And so the format is that we're going to share 3 different scenarios with you via 3 different poll questions. And so when we ask a poll question, we'll give you the opportunity to place your answer. And if you choose the correct answer from that group, we'll give away a prize today for each particular poll. So 2 things before we get started. One is just stay engaged the entire time. So just because I'm going to ask a question, and just be sure and be ready to answer those questions. Look for your Q&A button in your Zoom window. If you have a question that we can answer for you at the end of this webinar, we'll be glad to do that. So submit your Q&A and we will answer that at the end of the webinar. And number 2, look for the raise the hand feature in Zoom. And make sure that you know where that raise hand feature is, because I'll ask you to raise your hand throughout this event as well. So gentlemen, with that, good morning. If you just want to kind of set up what we're going to talk about today related to hiring, Lee and or Hugh, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, this is an exciting subject for me because I've been involved in some angle of this for 30 years. Started in 1990 because I was a career counselor, became a career counselor when I retired from the Air Force and developed a career assessment program. Well, that's one side of the coin, so to speak, helping people identify their talents and their passions and where they're the best match. But then I started working with leaders to help them hire and manage the people they had already. And so it's been just part of my daily life for so long. And I have a passion about helping people understand their talents and understand how they apply in the workplace. And so with that, it helps both the individual and the managers, the leaders, the corporate business owners to help them be successful in their company, because when you have people in the right role, they perform much better than if they're in the wrong role based on their talents. You know, I started laughing a minute ago as you were introducing, Kevin, because I was thinking of an example of there are certain things that I do pretty well, and a lot of things I don't do very well at all. You know, for some things, hiring me to do them would be like hiring a donkey or a jackass to run into Kentucky Derby. There's no way a donkey is going to win the Kentucky Derby, even hardly finish. And there's certain activities at work that I'm that bad at. You know, I'm a misfit. So understanding how to see those talents quickly is what Hugh and I do, is help people understand natural talents. And so it's so important. So I guess the big overarching idea is that people perform best and they achieve their purpose and calling in life when they know their talent, natural talents, what they're good at, and they're passionate about that same thing. And when you put those 2 together, then you have someone who is just going to accelerate and want to be an overachiever, just part of their passion and using their best talents. And we're going to talk about a number of different stories and examples today that kind of prove that. We know that intuitively, but we're going to show you how to do that and understand a little bit more scientifically, probably. Hugh?
Yeah, I think just sort of to work on what Lee said, one of the reasons why I'm so interested in this is that the hiring process for a lot of people is something that's quite mundane and it's seen as a bit of a chore. And I think that's for the employer, whereas really it should be seen as a very key part of the business. It should be built into the culture of the business. In a way, it's a sales process, so it's something that the leadership of the business needs to take a very keen interest in, and almost make it something that's exciting. And I think for the employee, my experience with it when I was an employee many years ago and looking for a job is it can be quite disempowering for the individual if not done properly. The way in which questions are asked in the interview, how you're made to feel, and then the onboarding process, I think, is also something that's so critical with hiring to get right, because you might hire or bring on board the best person in the world, but if they're not onboarded well, the relationship's never going to be right with the team and it becomes a problem. But I think, what Lee and I have also seen along the way in our journey with it is that people talk about roles, like, for example, sales roles, and assume they're all the same. And not every sales role is the same. In fact, they're quite different. And you really need to understand what are the talents required for the particular role and get that understood, because someone could say that they're a great salesperson and in fact were a great salesperson in one business, but in another business, they will fail. I had a great friend of mine, and she was fantastic at selling tax software in Deloitte's. And she was what we call a community builder style person, fairly concrete, but very relational. Tax partners would wheel her in front of a client when they could see that she was needed for a role. The software was needed. And she did a great at taking on the relationship and closing the sale. But when she went to work for a startup entity business, she couldn't do it because she was not the hunter that could go in there and build the new relationship from a cold start. Wasn't innovative enough to bring, to bring the solution-based sale to the organization, and failed. And so, great at sales in one setting and absolutely hopeless in another. And I think organizations face that all the time. And you really need to spend a lot of time pinpointing, the talents required for the role. And not, experience is important, but it's not always going to win the day if the talent's wrong.
Absolutely. Yep. That's great. Great setup, gentlemen, on this topic. And so if it's okay with you, let's go ahead and go to the first scenario. And this one specifically is about hiring a project manager. And so audience, if you'll pay attention, and then we'll go ahead and present this first idea. And so we really have two different candidates for this project manager position. And so briefly, Lee and or Hugh, just set up these two different candidates and maybe the high level differences between the two, then we'll ask the question.
Well, this person is your typical very outgoing person who enjoys meeting people, is a good talker, smiles a lot, reasonably take charge there, right in the middle, average take charge ability. Patience right on the middle, which will enable them also to be a good listener at times and certainly to be empathetic toward people. Spontaneous, not always quite as organized and planning ahead, and very trusting. More concerned about work-life balance, a little bit on the cautious side, but very creative. So this person is going to be driven to some degree, to a large degree, by three major things here: being outgoing, being somewhat content, and then creative.
Yeah. And so again, we're talking about our project manager position and these two candidates. So this is the first candidate, and then the second one was what we call a reflective thinker profile. So just go briefly through this particular profile.
Yeah, I can do that. The reflective thinker in this case is quite opposite to the engager. The engager was the more outgoing person that we just saw. And now we can see, for example, that the reflective thinker is quite reserved with a score there of 40. So remember that, in looking at these profile graphs, the middle range scores where the person can adapt are between 45 and 55. And then going out to the right-hand side, the score gets stronger. This is on a bell curve progressively as it passes through 55, 60, and 70. I always look for the score over 60 to see where that dominant trait's going to be. And then on the left-hand side, it goes on a mirror opposite to the left, the score getting progressively stronger the closer it goes to 20. And remembering that in our system, in the DNA system, we're measuring the factor scores on the left-hand and right-hand side. So strengths come from both sides. And so that's important in looking at this. So for this individual, the reflective thinker, they've got an incredible strength in being reserved with a score of 40. That's around the top 16% of the population on being reserved, more reflective, probably a little bit more guarded and task-focused in their approach. And then you go to the plant, extremely strong with a score of 67. This is inside the top 5% of the universe of being planned and structured in how they do their work. Going to be quite skeptical, a little bit guarded with the team, probably ask quite a lot of questions. And then they're relatively middle range on content, cautious, and anchored. So you've got quite a different person here than the engager, who could potentially fill the project manager role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've done a good setup, gentlemen. And so we'll start with audience. We're going to start with the first poll question. I'm going to go to the first poll, and depending on your answer, if it's the correct answer, then you'll be eligible for today's prize for this particular one. So it's up on your screen now. So imagine you're hiring for a project manager for a detailed program that you're launching. Based on these two candidates, who is the best fit for the job? Go ahead and submit your answer and who you think is the best fit based on the descriptions for the engager profile or the reflective thinker profile that you're seeing there. So the answers are coming in. It's very interesting. Okay. Yeah. Good. Answers are still coming in. We'll take a few more seconds to do that. Good. All right. So I think most everyone is answering or has answered. So be sure and click your answer as we're going to end. All right. I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. So we're saying that 31% of you think the engager is the best one for this project manager position, while the reflective thinker is the best one for 69% of you. So the correct answer that we believe is the reflective thinker. So those of you that answer the reflective thinker answer are most correct in this particular scenario. So with that in mind, if you answer the correct answer, the 9 of you, if you would raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature, and we will choose a prize from those of you that answered. So if you chose the correct answer, raise your hand and we will. Very good. All right. Congratulations, Rena Palacio. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Congratulations. You've won this prize. We're giving, for this particular question, we're giving away the Business DNA hiring report. So it is exactly what we've been talking about. So you will get a copy of the hiring report and we will contact you and make sure that you get your prize. So thank you again for participating in that. And thank you for all of you that answered all of the correct answers. So explain a little bit more, gentlemen, why reflective thinker is the more appropriate one in this instance.
I'll start out, Kevin, and let's start with the reflective thinker. That's probably the intuitive answer. If you want to deliver a project, that means the work's got to be, the project's got to be delivered on time, presumably on budget, and all the details taken care of. That's what you're going to think of for a normal project management role. So somebody that is planned is going to more likely be able to do that. And if they're certainly in the team, that's going to be a very good fit. If they're reserved as well, then they're going to be a task-focused person, put their head down, and basically just go and get it done. And I think that's really what you've got here with the reflective thinker. Their middle range on creative. So if they need to do a bit of problem solving along the way, they can do it. But if they just need to keep to the plan, they can do that. They're not going to take risks and disrupt the program too much. And right at the top there with take charge and cooperative, they're going to work well within a team to get it done. And if they're the team leader, they will delegate to the team and get everything done. Get people working collaboratively well together, or they will be a good follower or collaborator themselves. So I think they're the main reasons why you would intuitively go for the reflective thinker. But again, it's important, and I'll let Lee say something. I think it's important always to define what the project management role is. Yep. What is exactly got to get done, how much creativity is needed, in fact, how risky is that project, what are the deadlines? And one of the things I was sitting there thinking about is how many people are involved. And if it's just a project that one person's doing, then the reflective thinker is great for that. But if this is something that's got a project that's got to involve a lot of people, a lot of collaboration with a lot of people, maybe you start thinking about the engager, so long as they're not too unstructured, because they can connect with a lot of people to get that project done. So it's just a matter of what the person's exactly got to do in the role. So I'll hand it across to Lee now on that.
Exactly, Hugh. Great point there. It really depends on what the project is. The normal project, when you think project, it's more task oriented, and certainly then the person who is the reflective thinker is going to be more reliable because they're better at self-managing and better at coming up with a plan and the milestones and knocking it off and having it done by the deadline. But if it involves influencing other people, then your engager is going to be the one, but you also need to know that engager is probably going to need a reflective thinker working beside them to take care of the inside stuff and the projects part of it have to be done. I'll give you an example of one of the worst decisions I've ever made in putting somebody on a project. I hired a guy who was a great pilot, instructor pilot working for me, who was probably a reflective thinker, very reliable guy, to be what would be called the United Way campaign manager in regular workplace, as it's a combined federal campaign in the military. Well, we did not do very well at raising funds that year because he just set it up and he didn't motivate, he didn't promote sufficiently. The next year I hired someone like an engager and we went through the roof right away and met all our goals that year. So it really does, as Hugh was saying, it really depends on what the project is. If it's going out in the community and getting volunteers or getting donations, then you've got to have somebody who's more sales oriented, a promoter, to get that happening. Now they're going to need some support to do all the tasks and paperwork behind it. But if it's a project inside, let's say it's organizing the files in the courthouse, then you probably don't want an engager for that. You want someone who's more like a reflective thinker. So again, as you said, get that role description really down and work through it with others so you get all the angles on it before you start.
Yeah, I think that, Lee, just to back up the point and sort of, don't want to, hit a fly with a hammer too many times, but it's really important in the hiring to go through all the talent, all the profile factors, the traits that we showed on the graphs, and then prioritize them to what is required for the role, the talents required for the role, and do a prioritization of them. And that's what we do essentially when we prepare benchmarks for roles, particularly when there's standardized roles. That's something that's very important, and not enough people spend time on that. They just say, oh, I need somebody with some skills that can do this and had this kind of work experience, and then throw the job at them and hope that they can do it. Well, at the end of the day, hope is not a strategy. And I think really working away at it up front and then looking for the match between the behaviors or the traits and the talents required for the role, that's what's important to do at the end of the day.
Great. Great answers. Great insights. Lots of great information, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. The next question is more about work reward motivations. And I think if you ask 10 people, they may give you 10 different answers on what they think is the most valuable trait that top talent is looking for when they're trying to attract top talent in an organization. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the next slide, which is related to this particular question. And it's specifically from our hiring report. And so just briefly give us a high level overview of what we're seeing here, and then I'll ask the question on what we think is the best work reward motivation.
You know, I think one of the reasons we put this here was it's fair to say in today's world, a certain amount of money is important. You've got to put food on the table. I think, as Lee said before the call, you can't just be starving the whole time. But people wake up and want to go to work for different reasons. You know, when I first got my very first job at Arthur Andersen back in 1986, training was the most important thing to me. I had a job offer from 8 different accountancy firms. There was the big 8 at that time. I got a job offer from all of them. And now I will be honest, I did take the one that they gave me $500 more than anybody else. But actually what swung it was I had the best training programs. And I thought I can learn from that. And I had a bit more of an American culture, and I was based in Australia. And I had a leaning to that because I thought I'd learn something about marketing. So that, you know, I think there's more to, you know, there's more to this why people go to work somewhere. You know, not every firm can pay massive bonuses. That's not what you're going to get at firms, you know. So flexibility in leave, in annual leave is important. Career progression, the people you're going to meet, you know, these types of things are important. I'm in a not-for-profit role right now as sort of as a sideline, almost sideline career, but it's about, that's giving me leadership training. That's why I do it, to live outside myself and become a better leader. It's certainly not a financial choice. So, you know, what we want to do in hiring here is to recognize in the workplace that there are different reasons that people would want to come and work in a job. And in a way, part of the job description is going to, you know, can be written and structured to appeal to these different motivations.
Just looking at the screen here now, you know, it's important to understand what their talents are, and then the roles that you're looking for, the kind of roles that they're probably best suited for. So we're always looking for that match, because it's so expensive to make a bad hire. You know, if you think about the cost and money, if you hire somebody and it takes 3 to 6 months maybe to discover that was not the right hire, and you're out money and you got to start over again, and it's just a significant cost. And the energy that comes from that sort of thing, and knowing and understanding, and even let's say this report here, using the concepts in that report there to as part of your interviewing, to ask them about their work environment. It's very interesting because, you know, I have a person in my family, I won't say who it is, but one of my in-laws, but he would never want to work in an office. You know, it would kill him to work in an office. He's outside, he's outdoors. He wants more fluidity and more change and more hot weather and cold weather and all the things that go with that. So knowing those kind of things as part of your interviewing is very powerful and important, as well as the desired work outcomes or the rewards there. And they vary. And sometimes even with 2 people with the same talents, one may want certain kind of rewards and one may want a different kind. So I guess we probably have told too much for the question, but Kevin, maybe you should go ahead with that.
Right. Yeah, let's go ahead and launch the poll, audience. We're going to go ahead and launch this poll. And the question really is, and here it is on your screen now, what desired work reward does not generally motivate employees? So go ahead and place your answers on these 4 questions: career progression, leadership position, personal growth, or lots of money. There are, what desired work reward does not generally motivate employees? Go ahead and answer place your poll question here to be eligible for the next prize. And we'll see what those answers are coming in now. We're seeing people vote. 12 of you are there, 13. What desired work reward does not generally motivate employees? Go ahead and answer. We're gonna wrap this up in about 10 seconds. Good, good. Thank you for answering. All right. Here are the results. So 2 of you said leadership position, 5 of you personal growth, and 9 of you said lots of money. And so in this particular scenario specifically, what desired work reward does not generally motivate employees? It would be lots of money. We believe that people are much more motivated by the other 3 options than they are by money. So congratulations. Thank you for sharing your answers. And so of those that answer the correct answer, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you got the correct answer, those 9 of you, and we will give away the next prize. If you answered lots of money is the correct answer, go ahead and, all right, good, good, thank you. Congratulations, Jeff Morris, you've won the next prize. And what we're giving away on this one is the Leadership Behavior DNA book and report package. So you get the book as well as the LBDNA reports, a fantastic prize, and it goes way in depth into what we're talking about today regarding hiring scenarios. So congratulations, Jeff, and we'll make sure that you get that prize.
Couldn't go to a more passionate person. But I think that we should, what it's important in debriefing this a little bit, that we're not saying here in any way, I just want to reiterate that money is not important. It is, and people, money is some ways a reflection of what you've done, your productivity, your success. So in a role, so it is there, and it's different for each of us. How important it is, and that might also be, some people have already got money, and so therefore more money doesn't matter as much. But I think it's important to put it in. It's important to put it in perspective. It's a factor, but people value some of the other factors just as much, if not more. So if money is sort of all things being equal between 2 roles, then all the other factors start to become extremely important. And there are more than just the 4 listed here. We've got, in our hiring report, we have 25 main types of desired work rewards that are important, and they tend to come up depending on your style.
There's a delicate issue here that I want to touch on for a minute, and that is, as a career counselor, that was a long time ago, but people, when they start looking for a job, they are attracted a lot by money. But the minute they get in there and their performance and their motivation, money kind of evaporates very quickly. And so that's why you don't want to hire for money. And once they get in, it is not the motivator. There are other things that are going to be much more important to them. But early on, a lot of people who've never really worked much, or who have maybe worked and failed, they are going to be considering money, and you have to help them sort that out. And a mature person who's worked for a while knows that money is not going to provide the satisfaction for them. So they're going to go for something that's part of their passion and uses their talents, and they know the money will flow with that. So sometimes you, as the employer or the person doing the hiring, you have to take that into consideration, and that's why you have to do your due diligence to help them understand that this going strictly for money is really a short-term goal that probably will not in itself bring the rewards that you're really looking for. And as a hirer, you're looking for the passion, the talent, that match up, because that's where you're going to get high performance and retention, at least initially. Now, you're going to have to do some things to retain them. You're going to have to, we talk about that in some of our other webinars, you're going to have to help them see how they're valuable and let them know that they are significant. They're important, and you value their contributions and their talents. And that's the people culture we talk about in the DNA behavior book. So those are things you're going to have to do after you get them hired and on board, to keep them performing at a high level, but also to retain them.
Yeah, I think, I was just reflecting, Lee, on some of my experiences in hiring, and particularly since we use DNA behavior, we use our own cooking, having the talents gets you to the table for the interview.
Mm-hmm.
But the questions I start asking when we're doing the interview will quickly get to, what are you passionate about? At one point, I was a little bit soft in asking those questions because I thought it was a bit too much woo-woo. But now I get straight in down that track once they're in at the interview, particularly with me, because if the person's not passionate, I just know that they're going to walk out of there the first day that they have a bad day, or that they find something else that they want to do, or something's gone wrong at home, or whatever. And I think comes with passionate is a bit more resilience, a bit more commitment. They want to make the company work, and I think it's just so important to really mine for it, and walk away with a very connected, deep feeling that that the individual is passionate and they're not just doing the job to get a paycheck. That I think that's just so important, and the hiring process is really got to be set up to mine for it.
Mm-hmm. This is not really that pertinent to our discussion today, but it's pertinent to the overall picture, and that is helping that person see the value of the mission of the company to their own values, that wherever you can get your personal values, your calling and mission in life tied and aligned with your business work, you can show them. As a leader, I think too often leaders fail to take the energy and time to show their people how what they're doing is valuable to others, it's valuable to the country or to the state or the community, the service it's providing. It's bringing life to people. It's bringing joy and happiness to people. And when you do that, you bring another. It's almost an immeasurable quantity or quality. Maybe it's not quantitative, but it certainly is qualitative in bringing that person in a feeling of success in life, and increases their retention.
Yeah, I think values. You touch on values. Values are very important for the hiring, and I think it's critical the company doing the hiring has their values clearly defined and are living those values, because if they're not, then that will be quickly found out. People feel that out the gate, and I think we're in today's world, we're in a lot more values-driven world as well. And I think values come with the passion, and it's absolutely key to there.
I was doing a workshop for a group of executives, the CEO and the leadership team of a large trucking company once, nationwide trucking company. And after lunch, I knew they're going to be a little drowsy. Most all of them were over 50, and I wanted to get their attention. They'd all taken our assessment. And I said, guys, I've looked at all your scores and everything, and to be honest, there's not much difference in you guys and the leaders of the mafia. Well, that woke them up. They started looking around. Where is this guy going with this, And I said, you want to defeat your competition. You want to take territory. You want to, gain market advances. You want to make a lot of money, on and on. I'll rattle off all these things. The only thing is your values are different. You just don't want to kill people. The mafia would kill people to do that, but you wouldn't. It was a good way to break up the afternoon, but it ties into what we're saying about values. They're important.
That's a great example, Lee. Yeah, that's a great example. And what you've been talking, and many of the points you've just made are a great segue to our next question. It's related to an onboarding a new hire. And so in this particular scenario, Chris is the new employee, and then Helen is the manager. And so this is a typical comparison report page that we use every day in our work. And so if Chris is the new hire and Helen is the manager, kind of set up a little bit. I'll ask the question, but go ahead and set up just a little bit the obvious differences between these two, and really how onboarding really affects this particular case.
Well, so just to level set it, Chris is the heavy line there, the completed line, and Helen's the dotted line. So one of the things that would be important just to know in onboarding there is where are the biggest differences between the two of them, between Helen and Chris? And we don't have to go far where we start to see, for example, outgoing and reserved. And if I was Helen, who's quite outgoing, and I've got Chris who's reserved coming in to work with me, and Chris is sitting there a little bit, he's going to be a bit more blank-faced, there's not going to be as much smiling, he's going to be a shyer individual, and Helen, as the boss, walks out all bubbly and excitable, asking questions. That's going to be a big difference. And Helen might be wondering, Helen might be wondering why she's not connecting with Chris when Chris is just sitting there a bit shy and not talking up. And Helen might wonder, that Chris is not that enthusiastic about the job. That'll be a problem. She's trying to GM up, and he gets more and more inward, and that will be a problem. Now, on the other side, Chris is going to need to buck up a bit and be a bit more communicative and actually demonstrate some enthusiasm. He's going to have to get outside of himself on that front and show his boss on the first day that he isn't just here for a paycheck. He's warm about this. And create some connection. I think that's where they would probably struggle at the start is creating some connection. Now, the other side is they've got some very different talents, and depending on what they're going to do in the role, they'll become important. So we can see that there's some differences between the two of them down there on planned and spontaneous. Chris is going to be a bit more planned than Helen. Helen could be in being spontaneous, more intuitive, flexible, but also could be seen as a bit chaotic on the other side for Chris. Chris could just be too fixed and stubborn for Helen. And then we go down, and I think one of the big ones we're seeing there is the drive in the pioneering. Chris is going to be very goal-driven, so he's going to want to absolutely know day one what his tasks are, what's the measurable number, what result is he chasing after, how can he be the maximum on productivity, whereas in that area, Helen might be a little bit more carefree depending on how she's remunerated, and will in fact be looking for Chris to do the work, but she might be certainly a lot more balanced in her approach to that. So Lee, is anything else you'd like to share?
No, I think that's a pretty good covering of it. Let's see how they respond, and then we'll jump back on it.
I agree. That was a great setup, Hugh. So for this particular poll, what we're asking here is, and it's on your screen now, audience, is so this onboarding of Chris, in this onboarding scenario, why is the new employee disruptive or disconcerting to many members of the team? Why would he be disruptive? Is it because he dresses differently? Is it because he has a different behavioral style? Is it because he just doesn't socialize with any other members of the team? So what is the most correct answer? Go ahead and place your answers now for the next prize giveaway. And what is the most correct answer to this question? Does he dress differently? Does he just have a different behavioral style? Or does he is it because he doesn't socialize with any other team members? Go ahead and place all your answers. We'll wait another moment. All they're coming in now. So thank you for your votes. And we'll take another 5 seconds. Anyone else want to go ahead and vote? All right. And the polling here and sharing the results. So by and large, most of you said the new employee really just has a very, very different behavioral style than the other team members. And then the new employee doesn't socialize well with other team members, that could be correct, but the most correct answer is number 2. The new employee just has a different behavioral style than the other team members. So that's why there may be a chance for disruption or a kind of a disconcerted kind of scenario. So if you chose that correct answer on number 2, raise your hand in the participants area. Go ahead and raise your hand if you chose that correct answer. Raise your hand. Very good. All right. Thank you. Good. Thank you. Jojo Reyes, congratulations for receiving this prize. This prize is what you see on the screen. You're going to get a business DNA comparison report, complimentary of DNA behaviors. So congratulations, Jojo, and we hope that you can use that in your hiring and or your team dynamics development with your team. So congratulations. Thank you. All right. So explain a little bit more. So Lee and Hugh, why is that the most correct answer in this particular case?
Yeah, I think the extremes, as we've shown, the extremes are pretty strong here. And the way that Helen has set up the organization, the way she operates, is that it feels warm. You know, it feels safe. It feels happy. She's creating that warm environment. And here comes along Chris, and he's just almost the opposite of that. And you're going to see his skepticism playing a role here, because he's going to ask hard questions. Well, why is that true? Why are we doing that? And people are going to start feeling like, well, who is this guy? Where did he come from? And why doesn't he join the crowd instead of being such a pushback on everything? Also, you know, looking at his score of 69 on the take charge and 55 or so, 79 on pioneering, that is so much drive to fix things, change things, take control, that he won't be able to restrain that for very long, because you're going to see some expressions on his face when he can't influence the direction things are going. And he is, you know, he's a strategist, and strategists really have they think things through very well, they plan very well, and they're seldom wrong, to be honest with you. In fact, they're right so much of the time, it's hard for them to ever concede that they are wrong. So he will be pushing against the tide, so to speak, in a way that is really unusual. It's going to make people think, okay, where'd this guy come from? Who is he? He's new on board, and now he's trying to take over. He questions everything we're doing, or he's withdrawing, because if he can't dominate, he's probably going to try to withdraw, because engaging is not a natural talent for him. Whereas Helen is much better at engaging and working through something. That will be a challenge for him.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Lee said, is it sort of sits there in a way also in the first line with the take charge of Chris, that he's going to want to dominate the conversations. He's going to want to be the decision maker. And, you know, if Helen's got a nice flow going on there in the business, and he comes in and, you know, wants to push it in a different direction and take control a bit, that will immediately become very disruptive for the team. It's really almost at the end of the day, Chris needs to be onboarded, but he needs to have his own clear area of responsibilities and what he's got to run and be accountable for. That's got to be clear on day one, written down and told, you go and chase that and keep out of the way of everybody else. Because he's probably not going to be a great team player either. He'll want to leverage the team, but it's probably not going to be great in the team. That's going to be you know, the issue there. Now, of course, he can be. I think it's an area we haven't talked about a lot today, is he can be great in the team. He's just going to have to learn how to do it. And that's going to be the adapting and himself. But under extreme pressure, he won't find it that easy to adapt. And I think that's something that Lee and I wanted to talk about today, is that, you know, we're very focused at DNA behavior on understanding your natural behavior style to start with, because it's the core foundation. And it will, you know, those traits will run through with you for all of your life, for the rest of your life. But, you know, we've all got strengths and struggles. You can do something about that behavior to modify it in circumstances when needed. You know, what we encourage is to capitalize on the strengths, but manage the struggles. Understand that you do have blind spots. But we're not advocating that you can completely rewire yourself. I think, you know, you can do a lot of work to modify, but under pressure, that flick of the switch, you move back to that zone. And you know, I think that's something to, you know, that's something just to remember when you're hiring people, that a leopard's not going to change its spots. Don't hire someone and think you're going to change them. You want to match that talent to the role and understand, yeah, that then within that framework, they've got to do a little bit of adapting to work with other people, cope with different situations that might arise. But we're not here to completely change the person.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to start in hiring someone.
Yeah, well said. And, you know, I want to circle back to something you said, and I want to say it slightly different because it's so important. Is right up front, when you're dealing with someone like the strategist, was it Chris? Was that his name?
Chris, yeah.
Chris, yeah.
It's me, Lee.
Yeah. You got to understand that they respect power and directness. And even though they might not like it in the moment, if you're going to be successful with them, you said right up front, we need to give them something that's their area and let them go do it and make that clear. And that's exactly right. You've got to give them some territory, some turf, put them in charge of it, but let them know where the boundaries are. And I promise you, you will have to address the boundaries from time to time, because this person, boundaries, unless they're really clear and they're banging their head on them, they're not going to even notice them. I'm not as strong as that guy, but I got called over by one of my peers once for telling her employees what to do. She said, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. She said, you're down there telling my people what to do. Well, I was just on a mission to get a job done, And I said, you're exactly right. I shouldn't have been doing that. Thank you for telling me. And I never forgotten that story and that experience. She was one of my peers, but it just makes the point that people with that strong a push, high in pioneering and high in take charge, they're going to step over the boundaries. So she did exactly the right thing. She didn't hide. She just came right to me and very softly, but very directly said to me, you got out of your boundaries. Those are my people, not yours. So being direct with those people, showing them where the boundaries are, what the expectations are, and doing it in a way that is very straightforward is so important.
I agree. So thank you, gentlemen. We have a couple of questions, but I wanted to mention this before we go today. Everyone gets a prize today. So besides our prize winners, so you have the opportunity to download a free sample of the Leadership Behavior DNA book. If you'll go to leadershipbehaviordna.com/downloads, get a copy of the free sample of the book. And there are other downloads there as well that may be helpful, but we wanted to mention that as a prize to everyone today. And secondly, also about the book itself, Leadership Behavior DNA. We've had such great feedback about this book, and we could not be happier about its reception and how people are really latching on to this idea of Leadership Behavior DNA and really how it can help propel your team to greater success. So we do have a couple of questions, gentlemen. Are you ready for those?
Absolutely.
All right. Jojo has a question. Specifically, is there a promising practice, I think, or a best practice maybe in reviewing team strengths and gaps with newer management members? Is there a strengths and gaps with newer management members that's a good practice, specifically for driving their teams, is what she's asking. So is there a best practice in reviewing team strengths and gaps with newer management members? Is there a way to do that, or how would you normally do it?
Of course, I would say get the DNA behavior team report and sit down with them and show them what the responsibilities of the team are and who's going to do well in this area and who's not going to do so well in that area, but who else is going to do well in this area and not so well in this area. And you start to see where the gaps are on the team, and you know what you're missing, and you know who's going to have to cover those and maybe slide over. I was coaching a CEO one time, and he wanted me, CEO of a hospital, and he wanted his chief medical officer to do some things that there was no way he was ever going to do. And I showed him his profile, and I said, I can coach him to get to the middle and this, what you're wanting to do, kind of the middle of the bell curve on that, but I can't coach him to be like you. He can't adapt that much. So understanding, and so he agreed that he was going to work out a new job description for his chief medical officer and hire somebody else to do the other stuff he wanted done for the next year. And then the chief medical officer was just going to go back to being a regular doctor, which he didn't give up completely, but a full-time doctor in his practice. So yeah, I think you can see a lot just by looking at the numbers and the graphs like we're talking about.
Yeah, I think use the DNA team report, put everybody on your team into the report. As Lee said, look for where the gaps are. But the other part, come back to the point we were making before, is also do a proper study and analysis of the talents that are required for each role.
Yeah.
That's got to come with it, and then you're going to absolutely know, and then you can talk to your team about it, because what the team report does is it makes it transparent for everybody to see and buy in as to who is needed on the team. The team doesn't have to equally fill up every talent, depending on what the team does. If it's a outside sales type team, it's going to be loaded one way. If it's more of a research or an administrative or finance team, it's going to be loaded another way. But you still need, some balance of talents, but you're going to see what's missing pretty quickly, I think, if you follow that avenue or that route.
And I know both of you well enough to know that that's not a sales pitch in mentioning the team report. It really is the best visual way for a team to see strengths and struggles of each member and how they relate to one another. So, I certainly agree that is the best tool to use. Hopefully that answered your question, Jojo, and I hope that was helpful to you. We do have the final question about the cost of a bad hire. And so we touched on that, Lee, you touched on that a bit earlier in our webinar today, but maybe go just a bit deeper for about a few minutes, talking about really the impact of a bad hire and why not using human behavior as a key lens for hiring, why that can cost you.
Let me just say one quick thing and then let Hugh jump on it. It's like so many other things. The 80-20 rule applies here. It's kind of in reverse. You could look at it as 20% of your people are doing the top performing work. It's getting 80% of the work done, but 20% of your bad hires will take up 80% of your time. I can promise you that. So it will suck the energy out of your team. And more than that, you might say it's depriving that person of being happy and successful in their life. And, as a person, I like to help people be successful. And as a leader in an organization, if I'm helping them be successful, they're going to make me look good. And I'm telling you, I have been very successful in my life as a leader, as a person, primarily because other people made me look good because they did their jobs well. And I got credit for it. It made me, I'm sitting there just riding on their shoulders. They're doing this job, and I recognize they were good at that. And, I got people in the right place, and it all works out. So there's so many reasons why getting people in the right role is so important. I'll let you take on it.
Yeah, the cost of bad hire, there's been, research studies done over the years about it. I think that for a more lower level role in a business, it might be 3 times salary, somewhere in that area there. Now, that's reflecting the retraining cost, the nuisance, the recruiter cost to get next person in. Once you start getting into, more C-suite level executives, that cost is probably going to become 10 times salary. It goes up because they've got more responsibility, more influence over the business. If their energy is bad inside the business, that causes a lot of problems. And I think that's really where the costs become in productivity, in dealing with the bad apple in the team and always having to work around them. What are they thinking? There's more emails flowing around. Everybody on the team feels it. There's no one, when someone leaves, is surprised the fact that the person's left. In fact, the leader is probably the last to know. The people on the team know earlier because they can feel it. Humans are like cats. We all know when there's a problem, and so it is measurable. Sort of in that ratio of 3 to 10 times. I think that's why it's important to spend time getting it right up front. And hire slow. I think take your time with the person. Maybe have them as a consultant first. Get to know each other. Have them following your business for a while, reading up on your business. That's what I've done a few times. And then the person comes in, and usually it works a whole lot better when there's already some relationship there. But the real cost, I don't think you even see it, is the bad energy that sits inside the team and the lack of productivity and the things that don't get done. And it's interesting, over time, what I've been seeing is our business, while we've been growing, we actually relatively get a lot more done with a smaller team these days because we've got the right team. When you've got the wrong team, you're often carrying too many people. You're working around each other, because there's a couple of bad hires in there. So I think, the costs are huge.
Yeah, and I think this probably doesn't relate exactly, but I'm going to say it. If you detect that someone on your team is being disloyal or stirring up bad energy, you need to address it so quickly, immediately. Well, sit down and come up with a plan. maybe test that plan with somebody else. I might test my plan with you here. This is what I'm thinking, whatever, because we're, partners, strategic partners like that. And then go act on it and keep walking down that road until it gets better or they're gone. I mean, you just cannot afford to turn your head. You can't procrastinate.
Yeah, I think it's this is sort of part of the management process is if you're getting that feeling is to ask questions early. Sit down with a person, ask questions while there's still respect in the relationship. And this is the thing with the different talents. And we use the terms understanding, acceptance, and respect, in team building. But you can have lack of understanding, which goes to lack of acceptance and ends up at lack of respect. That sort of, takes 3 to 6 months to work its way through. But if once respect is gone, then trust starts to go, bad things start to happen, and it becomes irretrievable. Whereas if you get a feeling up front, maybe you can ask some questions, you can reset something in the role, in the way and things are happening, or it might just be, it's a misfit. But deal with that while everybody's got some respect for each other, and it'll be a whole lot easier.
Yeah. If you have a feeling in your gut, so to speak, that things aren't right, they probably aren't. And so you might sit down, that's this person, nothing has been said or anything, but you might say, how's it going? I feel like you're a little down about things. And that person might say, I hate this job. You just never know what they're going to say. And having that conversation, give them an opportunity to open up and share what their feelings are about it and what they feel the challenges are, what they would like to do differently. Maybe they're looking over there and they say, I'd probably be a lot better performer in that job than this job. And you say, wow, that's a good idea. Let's see if we can work you over that way,
Well, this has been a great time. Fantastic information, power-packed information in an hour today. So Hugh and Lee, just thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your time, and congratulations to the prize winners. Any final comments before we go?
The only thing I'd say is dress does matter. Even though no one selected that answer. I remember when I was at Arthur Andersen, I got a bad evaluation because my bosses didn't like my ties. And I was just wearing plain red ties, so I was told I could dress better. On the other side, though, people who come dressed not representing the company brand properly, that is a problem. That is actually disruptive. So whilst we had that answer there and no one selected it, it probably wasn't the dominant one we were looking for. It's actually, dress is important for the role and for representing the company brand. And, we're a little bit more casual these days about that than we once were, but still remember who your client is and who you're serving and what the company brand is and values, and dress appropriately.
I thought you were going to get under me for my plaid shirt today. I was trying to be less formal today.
Lee, all of this year you've got more and more casual, but that's fine. We're in the COVID world. We can do that.
Well, that was a great footnote. Thank you for mentioning that. Well, thank you again to everyone. Thank you for attending today. I hope it was helpful to you. You'll get a replay of this webinar in your inbox shortly after this broadcast. So thank you again. Have a good day, everyone. Appreciate your time with us.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Lee. Bye-bye.